I'm working with my students to empower them through service learning. In one of my classes, for example, they go and put 10, 12 hours of service in the community, helping the Latino community in an organization that's called East Bay Sanctuary Covenant that serves many immigrants from all over the world, but particularly from Central America. And so the students help with taking the political asylum stories and translating documents. And my purpose behind that is that the students feel empowered because they are using the knowledge that they have of Spanish, and they are one-on-one teaching or helping someone else. And so it's a win-win situation.
We do perhaps over 200 asylum cases every year at this stage. And in fact, last year we did 215 or 216. This is a very complicated process. It takes at least 20 hours for each case. But the wonderful thing is that there's a collaboration between the volunteers where we have a partnership with UC Berkeley.
My sophomore year of college, I was taking Spanish 102 with Professor Barili, and she told us about a place called East Bay Sanctuary that helped immigrants mainly from Central America. And I decided to try out volunteering, and I really had no idea what I was getting myself into, but I was just really blown away the first few times I came in, just in talking to some of the people coming in to seek services here and hearing a little bit about their stories.
It was one of those things that for me, I just sort of loved it from the start. I started working full-time over the summer as a volunteer after I saw them come into Professor Barili's class, and then I sort of couldn't quit. I kept working during the school year. I ended up graduating a semester early, so I worked during the spring semester full-time and then the next summer. And it was one of those things that I don't think I could pass up the opportunity to work here. As long as I was in Berkeley, I was going to be here.
They are using that Spanish, going to this organization, which is just across the university, so it's very easy for them to intersperse it with their life at the university. And then they go and they sit with a refugee from Central America, and then they take the story as a refugee tells them, and then they translate documents and they do country research conditions that help the people in East Bay Sanctuary, the staff there, to prepare for the different cases that they are handling. So my students assist the staff of East Bay Sanctuary.
We simply could not do this without all the undergrads. And I would say from the Spanish department, it's like 60 or 70 a year who come to our program. Now, some of them put in a few hours a week, and others kind of get hooked and come in until I have to kick them out.
Working here for a few years was the best practice I ever had for Spanish. I think even better practice than going and studying abroad, just because you had to always make sure that you were using the right words and being precise. I wish I could have kept that up in law school. I'm losing some of the progress I made, but it's been great for my Spanish working here.
Social welfare classes are different than working here at East Bay Sanctuary because they tend to be more theoretical, more conceptual. So this is the place where I applied that learning, where I could really utilize what I learned in classes to talk to people here, to learn more about the approach towards immigration and how immigration actually affects people versus reading it in a textbook. So definitely made it more personal.
It was good to have both the academic experience of learning and then the hands-on experience of meeting real people and hearing how different historical events have affected their lives even to this day.
I was a Latin American studies major in college, and so I had sort of had that academic experience, but then coming to an office where you're working with immigrants from all over the world, but primarily from Latin America. It's sort of the other side of that education that I never would have been able to get in sort of my Latin American studies classes. And it's something that made me personally realize also how important it was for me to sort of keep going and keep pushing myself, and eventually I ended up in law school to work on immigrant rights issues.
What happens sometimes at the university is that the students get too worried about the A, and I find that spend 4 years pursuing an A is a loss of time, because it doesn't stick, the learning doesn't stick so much in their minds and hearts, because it's mainly theoretical, and it's also removed from their direct experience of the subject.
Yes.
And so I was looking for a kind of method that would help them to learn, but also to remember, and to come out of the university not only with whatever grade they got because of the work they did in the other part of the course that's more academic, but also with some experience of the difference that they can make. And when I found service learning, which is a method that is not only about service and is not only about learning. So there are certain subjects that we are discussing in class, like immigration or identity. Then they are relating the subject that they are learning through readings and discussions in class, etc., with their direct experience by meeting the immigrants and using the Spanish one-on-one.
Y también necesitamos un examen médico. So, ¿eso tiene o todavía no?
No, todavía no.
Todavía no. Okay, so tengo una lista de...
In a very compassionate and wonderful, loving way, our students of the classes reach out to everybody, no matter who they are, and just learn a whole lot about the human condition.
The first person I remember talking to, and I don't remember his name, but he was sitting waiting for someone to help him, and I still didn't really know what to do, but I sat down just to talk to him, and he told me that he hadn't seen his daughter for 3 years, that she had just been born when he left to come to the U.S. And that just really shocked me, trying to imagine what that would be like, and not having that option to go see her, or for the rest of his family to come here. So those were the kind of things that really affected me and got me thinking and wanting to understand more about immigration, more about what the history of these countries were that people were coming here.
My personal experience was, it's almost hard to put into words, but I still remember my very first client that I interviewed for an asylum case, and he was my age, and just sort of going through his life story compared to mine. I mean, it was something, I almost just wanted to like sit down and cry rather than keep going with the interview, but something that I learned in working with him and in working with all the clients here is just how resilient people are. You would think reading these cases on paper that the people who coming into the office would, be very fragile. In some ways they are, but in a lot of ways they're sort of the strongest people you'll ever meet. I mean, they've battled through so much adversity, and they're at the point now where they're taking matters into their own hands and getting themselves the help they need, and fighting for the right to stay in this country. And so, realizing just how strong the clients were is something that really, for me personally, it's hard to put into words how meaningful that experience was, but it's something that I really cherish.
I think the one that really touched me most was actually one that I didn't do the intake for, but I was answering the phones, and a volunteer was doing an interview with a woman, I think she was from Guatemala, next to me, and it was a case of domestic abuse. And what I remember most was not so much the story of abuse, but the woman was asked, how do you think a woman should be treated? And I expected it to be an answer like she was confused or she didn't understand because she'd been in a cycle of abuse for years and years and years. But she answered the way that I would have, or my mother would have, or any other woman, you know, that a woman should be treated with respect and with love, and that she should never have to worry about being hit or thrown out of her home. And it really just made me understand that everyone comes from a common background, even when everything in your life is different.
Right now, I'm in the immigrant rights clinic at NYU, which is a fantastic experience, and I think my time here at East Bay Sanctuary is really what sort of pushed me in that direction and showed me that that's what I wanted to end up doing with my life.
After I graduated, I decided I wanted some more experience working with the immigrant community in the Bay Area, so I started working in Oakland, and probably 90% of the 50 families I worked with were Spanish speaking. And I also started working more with some indigenous Mayan Guatemalan immigrants. And I was tutoring a family from Guatemala. And that was a really amazing experience. I would go to their house once a week and they would fix me lunch, and we would practice English and got to know each other really well, and they became very good friends. And through that process, I developed a special interest in Guatemala and in the indigenous Mayan community there.
When I came here, I got to know people who were from all different places, and I kind of started to understand the things I'd been reading and learning in Spanish for the past 6 years. And it definitely related a lot to my cognitive science class, where we studied something called the neural theory of language, which is actually being worked on at Berkeley right now, which says you can't understand how something works until you can imagine yourself or someone else going through it or doing it.
There is so much information that the students need to be able to sort out what is of meaningful for them and for their communities. And so I feel that instead of being repositories of information, the university needs to be a center for transformation, yes, for creative thinking, for finding new solutions to the problems that we have. And there is very interesting work done through neurobiology and cognitive science that, on the one hand, neurobiology is finding that the mind and the heart are connected, and that we need something called internal attunement. That means the heart needs to be at peace, and then there are neurotransmitters in the heart and there are neurotransmitters in the brain, and they are connected. And when the heart and the mind are at peace, then there are more robust interconnections with the neurotransmitters in our neurons, and we are capable to understand more and intuit more, come up with more creative solutions. Mm-hmm. And on the other hand, cognitive science is saying, you know, for so many years we talked about cultivating the mind, like if the mind was out there somewhere or inside here like a little homunculus in the brain, but really the mind, more than a noun, is a verb, is minding, is a learning, the process of learning that happens through the body. That's what cognitive science is telling us today. And so they are, thank God, starting to talk about embodied learning. And I think that's the door for us to then be able to bring contemplative studies into academia, into interdisciplinary courses, in the sense of, okay, if we are going to talk about embodied learning, and if we are realizing through the discoveries of neurobiology in the last 20 years that, you know, it's so important, the connection between the mind and the heart. So maybe we need to do some of these practices of calming the mind through deep breathing, through bringing attention and intention together, stopping for a moment, and also through compassion. You know, not always be in situations of competition, but going beyond the me, and my problem to, okay, how can I use what I know to help others?
Yes.
I'm in law school in New York now, but even every time I come back to the Bay Area to visit my family, I make sure to stop by. After I finished my first semester of law school, they actually let me come and represent some clients at their asylum hearings, which I hadn't been able to do before because I wasn't a law student, which was a fantastic experience. And then, so I'm, every time I'm here over the holidays, I make sure to come in and see if they have some work for me.
As I got more experience working with the Mayan community in Oakland, which is actually a pretty large and well-organized community in Oakland, I decided to look for opportunities to try to go to Guatemala and learn more about the country firsthand.
At the beginning of the semester, I knew I wanted a double major, and I knew Spanish was going to be one of my majors. And then I was debating whether or not I wanted to do social welfare. So it was after coming here that I decided, yes, I do want to do social welfare. So this is actually the perfect place for me to apply the skills I learned in Spanish classes and social welfare classes on campus. So this is a really useful setting for that. And I turned in my double major petition, so hopefully that goes through okay and I'll be on my way with that.
Our connection with the university is just a marvelous connection because it gives an opportunity to students to grow in a way that never grow. The fact that Professor Barili took such initiative in working with her students, in taking her students to our office and giving them a sense of the space and a sense of the people who come in every day, that's a real gift.